My family laughed at me when I said I was engaged. I still remember the exact moment my family laughed in my face, the way their expressions shifted from shock to amusement as I told them about my engagement to Robert. It wasn't just a chuckle or a polite smile. It was full-blown, stomach-clutching laughter that echoed through my mother's immaculate living room. My sister Vanessa nearly spilled her champagne, and my mother had to dab at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Oh, honey," my mother said, finally composing herself. "You can't be serious." But I was. Deadly serious. I'd spent the past 3 years building a life with Robert, falling in love with his kindness, his dedication, his unwavering support through my struggles with anxiety, and my journey to establish my own small graphic design business. The diamond ring on my finger wasn't extravagant. Nothing like the 3-carat monstrosity my sister had received from her investment banker husband, but it represented everything we were. Genuine, hard-working, and completely devoted to each other. "What's so funny about it?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. At 32, I shouldn't have cared what they thought, but old habits die hard, and in the Pearson family, approval was a currency more valuable than the actual money that seemed to define our every interaction. "Darling," my mother, Eleanor, set down her crystal glass with a deliberate clink. "That man fixes air conditioners for a living. He drives a truck with his name painted on the side. He lives in a... what would you call it? A bungalow." She pronounced the word as if it were a communicable disease. "He owns his own HVAC business," I corrected her, "and he employs 6 people. The house is a craftsman, and it's in a perfectly nice neighbourhood." My father, who'd been unusually quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. "Emma, your trust fund alone could buy 10 of his businesses." He adjusted his gold cufflinks, a nervous habit he'd developed over 40 years of corporate law. "We just want what's best for you." What they meant was they wanted what looked best for them. The Pearsons had a carefully cultivated image in Westchester County, New York. My father was a senior partner at a prestigious Manhattan law firm. My mother sat on the boards of 3 different charities. My sister had married the right kind of man, from the right kind of family with the right kind of education. And then there was me, always the family disappointment, the one who'd rejected pre-law for art school, the one who'd moved to a modest neighbourhood in Brooklyn instead of taking the apartment they'd offered to buy me on the Upper East Side. The one who'd fallen in love with a man who worked with his hands and came home with grease under his fingernails some days. "I'm marrying him," I said firmly, standing up from the pristine white sofa. "The wedding is in June. I'd love for you all to be there, but I understand if you can't make it." That was 6 months ago. I should have known then that their disapproval would evolve into something much darker than mere laughter. I should have realised that in my family, rejection of their values wasn't just disappointing, it was a declaration of war. I didn't know then that by the time my wedding day arrived, I would be fighting not just for my relationship, but for everything Robert and I had built together. I couldn't have imagined that my own mother would become the architect of a scheme designed to tear us apart, or that my sister would be her willing accomplice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how far they were willing to go, you need to know what kind of people they really are beneath the designer clothes and charity galas. You need to understand what I was up against. It all started with a seemingly innocent lunch invitation from my mother, 2 weeks after I'd announced my engagement. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect. French, expensive, with portions so small they were practically invisible. My mother was already seated when I arrived, her Chanel suit perfectly pressed, her blonde bob not daring to move as she air-kissed my cheeks. "Emma, darling, you look... rested." It was her way of saying I looked plain. I'd stopped trying to impress her with my appearance years ago. My simple black dress and minimal makeup were professional enough for my client meetings, but would never meet Eleanor Pearson's standards. "Thanks, Mom. How are you?" "Oh, you know, busy with the spring gala. The committee is impossible this year." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "But I didn't ask you here to talk about that." I braced myself, taking a fortifying sip of the water the server had poured. "Let me guess. You want to discuss my poor life choices? Don't be dramatic." "Emma, it doesn't suit you." She delicately unfolded her napkin. I simply want to understand this engagement. Is it perhaps because you're afraid of ending up alone? Because there are other options? Charles Winthrop's son just got divorced, and he always did have a little crush on you in high school. The suggestion was so absurd I nearly laughed. Mum, I'm marrying Robert because I love him. It's that simple. Nothing is ever that simple, dear. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What about children? Have you considered what kind of life you'll provide for them? Private school tuitions alone? We'll manage, I cut her off. Robert's business is doing well. And so is mine. Not everyone needs trust funds and summer homes to be happy. My mother's lips thinned to a barely visible line. Your father and I have worked very hard to give you opportunities, Emma. To see you throw them away on some tradesman. It's disappointing. The familiar sting of her disapproval washed over me. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm building a life with someone I love. Love. She practically spat the word. Love doesn't keep the lights on, Emma. Love doesn't secure your future. Actually, it does for most people. They work hard, they support each other, they build something together. My mother sighed dramatically. You've always been so idealistic, so naive. She reached across the table and patted my hand condescendingly. But let's not argue. I have a proposition for you. And there it was. I should have walked out then. Should have seen the calculating look in her eyes for the warning it was. What kind of proposition? I asked. Against my better judgment. Your father and I would like to give you and Robert a wedding present, a substantial one. She took a delicate sip of her sparkling water. $2 million. I nearly choked on my water. What? Consider it an investment in your future, in our grandchildren's future. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. All we ask is that you sign a prenuptial agreement, to protect yourself, of course. The anger that flooded through me was instant and overwhelming. Let me get this straight. You want to bribe us? Don't be crude, Emma. It's a gift, with a very reasonable condition attached. I stood up, grabbing my purse. Robert and I don't need your money, and we certainly don't need your approval. My mother's expression hardened. Don't be foolish. Everyone needs money, even your precious Robert, especially him, I'd imagine. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all, dear. Her smile was poisonous. Just that men like him tend to know an opportunity when they see one. I left without saying another word. Hands shaking as I paid the valet to retrieve my car. The implication was clear. My mother thought Robert was marrying me for money, for access to the Pearson fortune. It was insulting, degrading, and completely wrong. Robert had never once asked about my family's wealth. He'd never shown the slightest interest in my trust fund or family connections. When I'd offered to invest in his growing HVAC business last year, he'd insisted on drawing up proper loan documents and had already repaid half the amount with interest. That night, as we sat on the back deck of our Craftsman home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I told him about my mother's proposition. $2 million? Robert whistled low, his hazel eyes widening. He ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving it charmingly rumpled. That's a lot of money. It's a bribe, I corrected him. And it comes with strings attached, a prenup for starters, and who knows what else they'd demand once we took the money. Robert was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful as he took a sip of his beer. Unlike my father, who drank aged scotch from crystal tumblers, Robert enjoyed simple pleasures, cold beer, Sunday football games, working with his hands. You know, he finally said, if you wanted a prenup, I'd sign one. I've never wanted your family's money. The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache. I know that. It's them who don't. He reached over and took my hand, his calloused fingers warm against mine. They don't know me. And honestly, based on what you've told me, I'm not sure they know you either. He was right. My family saw what they wanted to see. A disappointment. A charity case. A foolish girl making a mistake. They didn't see the woman I'd become, the life I'd built, the happiness I'd found. Let's elope, I suggested half-jokingly. Save ourselves the headache of dealing with them. Robert smiled but shook his head. No way. You deserve a real wedding. With all the trimmings. And I want to see you walk down that aisle toward me, even if your father isn't the one giving you away. My heart swelled with love for this man who understood me so completely. My friend Diane already offered. She said she'd be honoured. See? We'll have the people who actually care about us there. He squeezed my hand. Your family will come around or they won't. Either way, we'll be just fine. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about my mother's expression during that lunch had unsettled me. The Pearsons didn't take rejection well. They didn't accept defeat graciously. And my mother, beneath her polished exterior, had always been ruthlessly pragmatic about getting what she wanted. What I didn't know then was how far she was willing to go to prevent this marriage from happening, or that she'd already set her plan in motion, targeting the one vulnerability in our relationship, Robert's struggling younger sister, Melissa. If I'd paid more attention, I might have noticed the signs sooner. The sudden influx of cash in Melissa's usually empty bank account. The unexpected job offer at a prestigious Manhattan firm, despite her spotty employment history and lack of qualifications. The way she'd started dropping by our house more frequently, always when she knew I'd be working late at my studio. Melissa had always been a complication in our relationship, 24 and beautiful, but perpetually broke due to a combination of bad luck and worse choices. Robert had practically raised her after their parents died in a car accident when he was 20, and she was just 12. He'd put his own college plans on hold, working construction jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Even now, he bailed her out of financial trouble on a regular basis, unable to say no to the sister he'd sacrificed so much for. I understood his devotion to her. I even admired it. But I'd also seen how she manipulated him, playing on his guilt and sense of responsibility whenever she needed something. What I couldn't have predicted was how easily my mother would identify this dynamic as our weak point, or how effectively she would exploit it. The first concrete sign that something was wrong came about a month after my disastrous lunch with my mother. I'd stopped by Robert's office to bring him lunch, a simple gesture that had become something of a tradition for us on Fridays. His secretary, a kind older woman named Margaret, who'd been with him since he started the business, greeted me with her usual warmth. "He's in with his sister," she said, nodding toward the closed door of his office. "Been in there a while, sounded pretty intense earlier." I thanked her and waited, scrolling through emails on my phone until the door opened and Melissa emerged. She looked startled to see me, her expression quickly shifting from surprise to something that looked almost like guilt. "Emma, I didn't know you were coming by." Her voice was too bright, her smile too wide. "Just bringing lunch." I held up the paper bag from Robert's favourite deli. "Everything okay?" "Oh, totally fine. Just brother-sister stuff, you know?" She brushed past me quickly. "Gotta run. New job keeps me super busy." "Catch you later." Robert appeared in the doorway looking troubled. When he saw me, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey you, is it Friday already?" Something was definitely wrong. Robert was a terrible liar, one of the things I loved most about him. His honest nature made deception practically impossible for him. "What's going on?" I asked once we were alone in his office, the sandwiches forgotten on his desk. He sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. "Melissa's in some financial trouble again. Nothing new there." "What kind of trouble?" He hesitated, avoiding my eyes. She made some investments that didn't pan out. Lost quite a bit of money." "Investments? Melissa?" The idea was absurd. His sister could barely keep a checking account balanced. "What kind of investments?" "Some tech startup. A friend of a friend thing." He shrugged, still not meeting my gaze. "You know how she gets, always looking for the quick fix." Something wasn't adding up. "How much did she lose?" Another hesitation. "About 50,000. I nearly choked. $50,000? Where did she get that kind of money in the first place? Apparently, she got a signing bonus with the new job, plus took out some loans. He finally looked at me, his expression pained. "She's in pretty deep, Em. Could lose her apartment, her car, everything. And there it was, the guilt, the responsibility, the big brother who couldn't let his little sister fail, no matter the cost to himself. How much does she need? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be small. 25,000 would get her out of the immediate hole. He said it casually, as if we were discussing lunch options and not an amount that would drain a significant portion of our wedding fund. Robert, I began carefully. Don't you think this is a little convenient? She gets a mysterious new job, suddenly has money to invest, loses it all, and now needs a bailout right when we're saving for our wedding. His expression hardened slightly. What are you saying, Emma? I'm saying it seems suspicious. The timing, the amount. I hesitated, not wanting to voice my suspicions without proof. Have you seen any documentation of these investments? The losses? She showed me some papers. He sounded defensive now. And she was crying, Emma, really upset. Melissa had always been able to turn on the waterworks when it suited her. I'd seen it happen countless times. The pretty tears that never quite ruined her makeup. The trembling lower lip that made her look like a wounded child. I'm just concerned, I said gently. We've been saving for our wedding, for our future together. 25,000 is a lot to give away without being absolutely sure it's necessary. She's my sister. His voice was firm. I can't let her end up on the street. I know that. And I would never ask you to. I just think we should be careful. Maybe offer to pay her rent directly instead of giving her cash, or help her work out a payment plan with the creditors. He was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then he nodded slowly. That's actually a good idea. I'll talk to her about it. Relief washed over me. It wasn't that I didn't want to help Melissa. I just wanted to make sure we were actually helping, not enabling more irresponsible behaviour. And something about this whole situation felt wrong. I didn't voice my biggest fear, that my mother might somehow be involved. It seemed paranoid even to me. Why would my mother go to such elaborate lengths? What could she possibly gain by manipulating Robert's sister? I should have trusted my instincts, because this was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, things got progressively stranger. Melissa's financial troubles somehow multiplied, despite Robert's help with her rent and bills. She started showing up at our house at odd hours, often when I was out. Robert became increasingly stressed, spending long hours at work and taking mysterious phone calls that he'd step outside to answer. When I tried to discuss wedding plans, he'd change the subject or claim he was too tired. Our June date was approaching rapidly, but we still hadn't sent invitations or finalised the venue. One evening, after another cancelled dinner date because Robert had to deal with something for Melissa, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I called my old college roommate, Jessica, who now worked as a financial investigator. I need a favour, I told her, a big one, and it needs to stay between us. Jessica, bless her, didn't ask too many questions. She just took down the information I had, Melissa's full name, the supposed investment company, the timeline of events, and promised to see what she could find out. 3 days later, she called me back. You're not going to like this, she said without preamble. There is no tech startup, no investment, nothing. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I mean, the company doesn't exist. It's a shell, set up recently with no actual business operations. She paused. But here's where it gets interesting. The money did move. 50,000 went in, but it didn't disappear. It went to an offshore account, then came back to her as a series of smaller deposits. She still has most of it, Em. The room seemed to spin around me. She's lying, about all of it. Looks that way, and there's more. Jessica's voice was gentle now. The new job? It's at a subsidiary of Westchester Holdings. My blood ran cold. Westchester Holdings was my father's company, the investment firm he'd established decades ago alongside his law practice. That can't be a coincidence, I whispered. No, Jessica agreed. It can't. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Trying to process what I'd learned, Melissa was working for my father's company. She'd faked a financial crisis, and my fiancé was being manipulated through his love for his sister. But why? What was the end game here? I didn't have to wait long to find out. That very night, Robert came home later than usual, his expression grim. He barely greeted me before pouring himself a rare second beer and dropping heavily onto our couch. "We need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. Fear clutched at my heart. About what? About the wedding? About us? He took a long swallow of beer. "I think we should postpone." Though I'd been half expecting something like this, the words still hit me like a physical blow. Postpone? For how long? I don't know. A year. Maybe more. He finally looked at me, his eyes troubled. "Things are complicated right now. With Melissa, with the business. It's just not a good time." "The business?" This was new. "What's wrong with the business?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognise as a sign of deep stress. "We lost the Westbridge contract. It was 40% of our projected revenue for the next quarter." Westbridge, another company with ties to my father. This couldn't be a coincidence. "And there's more," he continued. "The bank is questioning our loan application for the new equipment. Said our financials don't look as strong as they did during the preliminary approval." I felt sick. This was orchestrated, all of it. My family was systematically dismantling Robert's life, his business, his relationship with his sister, and now our engagement. "Robert," I said carefully, "I think my family might be behind this." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I told him everything, my suspicions, Jessica's findings, the connections to my father's businesses. "That's—" He shook his head in disbelief. "That's crazy, Emma. Why would they go to so much trouble?" "Because they don't want us to get married. They never have." I moved to sit beside him, taking his hand in mine. "Think about it. My mother offered us money to sign a prenup. When we refused, suddenly everything in our lives starts falling apart. That's not a coincidence." He was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Even if you're right, what can we do about it? Your father is one of the most powerful men in New York. If he's really targeting my business, I'm finished." "We fight back," I said firmly. "Together, starting with your sister." The confrontation with Melissa wasn't pretty. We invited her over for dinner the next evening, and I laid out everything we knew: the fake investment, the job at my father's company, the suspicious timing of it all. At first, she tried to deny everything, her eyes filling with those practiced tears. But when I mentioned the specific details Jessica had uncovered, the shell company, the offshore transfers, the deposits back into her account, her expression changed. "You don't understand," she finally said, her voice small. "They approached me, said they could help me get back on my feet. All I had to do was create a little drama, make Robert worry about money right before the wedding." "Who approached you?" Robert demanded, his face flushed with anger. "Eleanor? Richard?" Melissa nodded miserably. "Both of them, at that charity thing last month, the one where you introduced me to them." I remembered that night. My parents had been surprisingly cordial to Melissa, much warmer than they'd ever been to Robert. Now I understood why. "How much did they pay you?" My voice was steady despite the rage building inside me. $50,000 up front, the job at the investment firm, and... She hesitated. "And?" Robert prompted. "Another 100,000 when you two broke up." She couldn't meet our eyes. "I never thought it would work. You guys are so solid. I just figured I'd take the first payment, pretend to go along with it. And then when you got married anyway, no harm done." The betrayal stung, but not as much as the calculated cruelty of my parents' plan. They'd identified our vulnerability and exploited it without hesitation. "What exactly did they tell you to do?" I asked. Melissa sighed. "Create financial emergencies. Get Robert to drain your savings. Make him worry about his ability to provide for you. Make him feel like he wasn't good enough." She finally looked up at her brother. "I'm so sorry, Rob. I never meant for it to go this far." Robert's expression was a mixture of hurt and fury. "What about my business? The Westbridge contract, the loan?" "That wasn't me," Melissa said quickly. But they did mention putting pressure on you from all sides, making you feel like everything was falling apart at once. It was exactly what they'd done. A coordinated attack designed to make Robert feel inadequate, to create stress in our relationship, to drain our resources and force us to postpone or cancel the wedding. We need proof, I said. Documentation, recordings, anything that links them directly to this scheme. Melissa hesitated, then reached for her purse. I might have something. They made me sign a kind of agreement. It spelled out what I was supposed to do, the payments, everything. She pulled out a folded document, several pages of dense legal text with signatures at the bottom. My father's work, undoubtedly. Always the lawyer, always creating paper trails despite his underhanded tactics. As I scanned the document, my disgust grew. It was all there in black and white. The services Melissa would provide, the timeline, the payments, even a confidentiality clause preventing her from discussing the arrangement. This is it, I said, holding up the contract. This is how we fight back. The next morning I walked into my father's law office without an appointment. His secretary tried to stop me, but I moved past her with the confidence that comes from a lifetime of privilege. Dad, I said, closing his office door behind me, we need to talk. He looked up from his computer, momentarily startled by my presence. Then his expression smoothed into his professional mask, the one he wore for difficult clients and courtroom appearances. Emma, this is unexpected. I'm rather busy today. I know what you and Mum did. I cut him off, dropping Melissa's contract on his immaculate desk. I know everything. He glanced at the document, his expression unchanging. But I saw the slight tightening around his eyes, the tell he had when a case wasn't going his way. I'm not sure what you think you know. Stop. My voice was ice. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. It's all here. The payments to Melissa, the sabotage of Robert's business, the whole elaborate scheme to break us up. My father sighed, removing his glasses to polish them, another stalling tactic I recognized from childhood. Emma, you have to understand. We were trying to protect you. From what? From being happy? From marrying a man who actually loves me for who I am, not what I'm worth? From making a mistake you'd regret for the rest of your life? He leaned forward, his tone softening to the one he used when trying to appear reasonable. Do you really think he can give you the life you deserve? The security, the opportunities, the what, Dad? The misery, the constant judgment, the conditional love that depends on following your approved life plan? I shook my head. That's not what I want, it never has been. You're being dramatic. And you're being cruel. Deliberately cruel. To me, to Robert, even to his sister. I tapped the contract. Do you realise this is illegal? Interference with contract, fraud, conspiracy. I could take this to the district attorney tomorrow. A flicker of genuine concern crossed his face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? You've never really known me. Dad, that's the problem. You've never bothered to find out who I actually am. I straightened, feeling stronger than I had in years. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to fix Robert's business problems, reinstate the Westbridge contract, make the loan approval happen today. Emma, I'm not finished. You're also going to transfer $1 million to this account. I slid a piece of paper with account details across his desk. Consider it restitution for the emotional damage you've caused and the wedding you tried to destroy. His eyebrows shot up. That's extortion. No, Dad, that's justice. And it's a bargain, considering what you tried to do to us. I gestured to the contract again. This buys my silence, nothing more. It doesn't buy my forgiveness or a relationship with your future grandchildren or a place at my wedding. Those things you'll have to earn if you even want them. He was silent for a long moment, calculating as always. Finally, he nodded once, curtly. The business issues can be resolved today. The money will take until tomorrow. Fine. I'll expect confirmation of both by close of business tomorrow. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. Mom stays away from Melissa, from all of us. If I find out she's interfered in our lives again in any way, I go public with everything. And I mean everything, including that tax situation in the Caymans that you thought no one knew about. His sharp intake of breath told me the shot had landed. My father's carefully constructed public image was his most prized possession. The threat of scandal was the one leverage I knew would work. I left without waiting for his response, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to Richard Pearson and won. When I told Robert what I'd done, he was stunned. $1 million, Emma, that's... It's nothing to them, I said. And it's not about the money, it's about consequences. They need to feel some impact from what they tried to do to us. What will we do with it? I smiled. I was thinking we could start a foundation, something to help young people who are raising their siblings, like you did with Melissa. Scholarships, emergency funds, counselling services. The look of love and pride in his eyes made everything worth it. You're amazing, you know that? We're amazing, I corrected him. Together. True to his word, my father fixed the business issues by the end of the day. The Westbridge contract was mysteriously reinstated, with improved terms. The bank called to confirm approval of the equipment loan, with a better interest rate than originally discussed. And the next morning, $1 million appeared in the account I'd specified. We never spoke of our conversation again. My father didn't try to contact me, and I made no effort to reach out to him. My mother sent a formal note, handwritten on her personal stationery, expressing her regret for any misunderstandings and her hope that I would reconsider including family in my special day. I didn't respond. Our wedding took place in June as planned, in the garden of the craftsman house that had become our home. Robert's employees formed an honour guard with their tools instead of swords, making us laugh as we walked beneath them. Melissa, genuinely remorseful and working to rebuild her relationship with her brother, was there with her new boyfriend. Not an investment banker or lawyer, but a kind teacher she'd met through volunteer work. My family's absence was noticeable only in how much lighter I felt without them there. Diane walked me down the aisle as promised, and my business partners stood as my bridesmaids. Robert's best friends from high school served as his groomsmen, their cheap rental tuxedos a far cry from the bespoke suits my father's friends would have worn. It was perfect. Not because it was elaborate or expensive, but because it was real. The people surrounding us loved us for who we were, not what we represented or what we could do for them. As we exchanged vows, Robert's voice steady and sure, as he promised to stand by me through whatever life brought our way. I felt a sense of peace I'd never experienced before. This was what family should feel like: acceptance, support, unconditional love. The foundation we established with my parents' restitution money is thriving now, 3 years later. We've helped dozens of young people like Robert, suddenly thrust into the role of parent to their siblings, navigate the challenges of education, housing, and emotional support. It's become my full-time passion, while Robert's business has expanded to 3 locations across Brooklyn and Queens. Melissa has found her own path, working as an administrative assistant at an elementary school and taking night classes in education. She visits often, a welcome presence in our home now that the manipulations and lies are behind us. My parents, well, they're my parents. They sent an expensive silver tea service when our daughter Lily was born last year. I returned it with a polite note suggesting they donate its value to our foundation if they wish to acknowledge their granddaughter's birth. They haven't tried to contact us directly again, though I occasionally hear updates through mutual acquaintances. My father retired from his law practice. My mother stepped down from 2 of her 3 charity boards. My sister divorced her investment banker husband after discovering his multiple affairs, and is now living in our parents' guest house while the settlement is negotiated. I'd like to say I feel vindicated by their troubles, but mostly I feel sad. Sad for the family we could have been if love had mattered more than appearances, if acceptance had trumped control, if they'd been able to see the value in a life built on genuine connection rather than strategic advantage. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about what they lost: a daughter who loved them despite their flaws, a son-in-law whose integrity outshone all their wealthy connections, a granddaughter whose smile lights up rooms and whose laugh can heal the deepest wounds. But then I look at the life Robert and I have built, our thriving foundation, our growing family, Our circle of friends who show up with casseroles when someone is sick and champagne when something is worth celebrating. And I know we're the fortunate ones. My family laughed when I told them I was engaged to Robert. They tried to destroy what we had because it didn't fit their narrow definition of success. But in the end, they taught me the most valuable lesson of all, that real family isn't about blood or money or social standing. It's about who stands beside you when everyone else walks away. It's about who believes in you when others laugh. It's about love that doesn't come with conditions or expectations. And by that definition, I have the richest family in the world. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.